Hello and welcome to the circus.
Let's party every day, like there's no other way. Get drunk and play it as a show. We'll stay out every night and count the city lights till we go. No other way, 'cause it's all I know. 'Cause it's all I know. 'Cause it's all I know.
Mutazi Tabanakusi. Welcome back to the Worst Interview Show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay. Y'all know the drill by now. This show is organic, grassroots, fan-driven, no sponsors, no ads. So if you want to help grow the show, super kick that subscribe button. But more importantly, send me some dumb questions and like stuff you want to see on the show for drafts, especially. You can hit me up at Jack Lucenay on all my socials, or you can always just send questions to worstsportschannel at gmail.com. Today on the show, I'm very excited to bring on the creator and CEO, I guess, of Sir Football, which is a new fantasy game hitting those streets. Welcome to the show, Mike Neugebauer.
It's all about the game, and how you play it, all about control. And if you can take it, all about your set. And if you can play it, it's all about pain. And who's gonna make it?
Welcome to the show, Mike.
Yep. R.I.P. Lemmy.
Yeah, it's funny. I always just think of Triple H, to be honest. I'm like, oh yeah, Motorhead, right.
Yeah. I'm not into wrestling, but I do like Motorhead, so that's the opposite for me.
Well, welcome to the show. For those that aren't aware, can you tell us where we can find you and some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so Sir Football just went live at the end of May. The website's available at sirfootball.com. And then on social medias, I have it at Play Sir Football on Twitter X and also on Instagram. And there's a few other social medias, but those are the main ones right now.
Okay, so I obviously have tons of questions about Sir Football, but we're going to kick that back a little bit. We always start with the bullshit on this show. I want to know, would you rather that your life mirror the film Indecent Proposal, except you're the one that's being sought after, or would you rather your life mirror Slumdog Millionaire?
Yeah, and this is a deep question, man, because it's a lot of money involved, a lot of decisions and strife involved, but I think it's going to have to be Slumdog Millionaire, because I'd rather go through the suffering and the strife and the struggle and kind of reach for the stars, or kind of have a long shot to go for and have something to pursue, and then maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I haven't actually seen the movie. I've read about it, though, and I've seen parts of it. So, but from what I've heard, that's what I'd go for. With Indecent Proposal, it'd be really tempting to be Demi Moore at her absolute hottest. I don't know what I would do in that situation, but it'd be kind of goofy to like get $1 million for basically doing nothing or doing something that comes naturally, and then after that you've got all the trauma and your marriage is in shambles, and then it's all rocky from there. So it's like, I guess I'm kind of going for the happy ending of sorts.
Well, and that's kind of the caveat, right? Is so Slumdog Millionaire, for those who have not seen the movie, it's basically about this Indian kid who goes through like the worst life ever. Like he's hiding in literal like shit under an outhouse so that he doesn't get caught by like some war guys or something, and he's just like has this like brutal, horrible life, but somehow it's like it all lines up to where he's now on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and just somehow all the questions end up being like things that he kind of saw when he was like at the lowest points of his life. And he's kind of like getting this question and being like, oh, I remember when I was being tortured and I saw that on the side of a box in Bangladesh. Like you really have to go through some shit for that one. But yes, theoretically, like you are altruistic at the end. Whereas with Indecent Proposal, you could argue it's just one event, right?
Yep.
And I kind of flipped it because I feel like me personally, and I think it's very dependent on your relationship of like, first of all, would you accept either role, to be perfectly honest? So in Indecent Proposal, again, those not familiar with the movie, Woody Nelson is married to Demi Moore, and it's I forget the name of the actor, but it's some real handsome rich guy.
Robert Redford.
There you go, Robert Redford. Thank you. So Robert Redford offers them basically $1 million to sleep with Demi. Now he could have just as easily offered $1 million to sleep with Woody, right? So that's kind of where my brain was at. I'm like, well, what if it was you, right? Because obviously your wife, like you're gonna be like, look, $1 million again. No, but it's you, Mike. Robert Redford is not there for Demi Moore. He's there for you. He's there for Woody. So now you're having the conversation. Do you think, I know my wife, I love my wife, she'd be kind of pissed if we turned down that much money.
Yeah.
And if it was me, it'd be one thing if it was her involved, but if it was me involved, somehow, so I guess, would you take that bullet? Would you take the Robert Redford bullet for your family? I don't think I would, to be honest.
No, it's tough, but you got to find another way, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Is you're going to go through 500 miles of shit and you're going to be the Slumdog Millionaire guy.
Exactly. Not fun. But.
So let's pull it back into reality a little bit here. So before actually we even get to the fantasy football stuff and surf football and all that goodness, we have, I think, a little bit of a mutual background as gamers. And I'm not quite a traditional gamer the way people would think. I'm very antisocial with my games. I'm very traditionalist. I like old games. So even like today, I spent most of my day playing SmackDown Here Comes the Pain on PlayStation 2, rocking the season mode. So can you give me a little bit of your background, your experience as a gamer, kind of where'd you start, where are you at now? I want to preface too that in researching for this show, sorry for such a long-winded question, but I watched your show with Greg Kellogg, Thursday Checkdown with the sports affiliation. Y'all make sure you go check that out. It was a great interview. So that's at the sports affiliation. You can find it if you just YouTube Thursday Checkdown, honestly, and it'll come up. But it was a great interview with Mike here and Greg Kellogg. And I remember during the interview, you guys were kind of touching on Dungeons and Dragons. You mentioned that was something you didn't have access to. So it got me kind of wondering, like, were there other games you weren't allowed to play? So like, what was that history of gaming for you?
Yeah. I first got into gaming. I mean, the game that I can, sorry, my dog's bugging me for some reason. But the first game I remember really being captured by is like going to the pizza parlor and they had Asteroids in the arcade. And it was just like, it was like the only video game there. So it was kind of a new thing. And it was just awesome to look at all those graphics and the things flying around. And, it was like light years above Pong, and even Space Invaders too, where you're kind of static and you're moving left to right. It's like Asteroids is like everything everywhere. But then I really wanted an Atari when I was a kid, and I think my parents, I don't know if we went half and half on it. I don't remember how that worked, but I got an Atari, and pretty much from there it was like save up all my allowance and get Atari games for like the next 5 years, and that was really my thing. And then also got an Apple II and kind of played some of my games on there, or played some games on there and built some of my own little rudimentary games on there as well. Back in the day where you'd have magazines that come out and you would have like assembler code and you type it in and then you'd get the game when you're done. Since there's no other way to get the game back in those days. It was pretty wild. So, that's kind of where things started. I did not do Dungeons and Dragons because, yeah, it was like, I guess it was one of those things you have to kind of be there, but it was, people were freaked out in kind of the religious communities about that because they'd see the little figurines and the stuff that just looked too occultish, you know, from the outsider. So, yeah, that freaked people out. So it was like, yeah, there was like one or two kids I knew that played it, but I knew that that was not going to fly if I had any of that stuff in the house. More, I guess, from the other games and stuff I didn't have a problem with back then. It was more of a music thing back then. Like, definitely no like listening to Wasp or King Diamond or Merciful Fate or some of those more aggressive bands. Have to stay away from those as well. But you know, yeah. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think you mentioned the Satanic Panic. It's funny that you mentioned that because it feels like it's such a regional thing for one, but also a generational thing. And I don't think it's separated by as long as people think. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think people kind of have in their head of like, oh, that's like from like the 70s or 60s. No, that was like 1985. Like,
oh yeah.
So sometimes, and it's funny that you mentioned Atari. So like, did you make the leap, I guess, from Atari to like Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and like, did you really follow the consoles as they came out, or did you kind of like fade off? And you know, you mentioned you were kind of doing some coding stuff and doing your own little.
Yeah.
You kind of fade off doing kind of your own thing, to really follow the console wars through those early days. Yeah.
Sorry about my dog there if you can hear him, but yeah. So I played Atari, and then I did get the Super Nintendo, and I specifically remember my friend always wanted to come over and play Duck Hunt all the time, and I was annoyed with that game. I just wanted to play the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game and Zelda on there, the very first Zelda.
Okay,
so
on the original Nintendo.
Yep, the original Nintendo. Yep. So yeah, I had some of those games. I think I had Contra, that was pretty fun to play too. The game where you're like scrolling upward and shooting with your machine gun at stuff.
Yeah,
that was a big one too. Yeah.
So for me, I started technically speaking on Super Nintendo, but then was able to get like that backtrack access to Nintendo Entertainment. I did not go as far as Atari. I'll tell you that right now. I never played Atari, never touched it in my life. But it's like video games have kind of always been there for me in some form or fashion. And it sounds like it was that way for you, but very much like the early days where that kind of access was limited to a lot of people. Like you even mentioned, you know, having to go to the arcade. Like by the time I was going to the arcade, like my favorite arcade, when people ask, what's your favorite arcade game? Like live arcade, it's like, for me, it's House of Dead 4. Which is like very different from, you know, when you said Asteroids, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like the days of Donkey Kong.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. And there's, you know, I would say once the 80s really picked up, there was so much stuff to play in the arcade that I think we're going to see this, Jack, is you've probably played games that I've hardly heard of or never touched and vice versa, just because there's so much out there. Not to even mention how much there is out there now, for good and for bad, with gaming.
No, absolutely. So, you know, obviously you kind of touched on it already a little bit, but did the video gaming, is that really what helped you spin off into kind of the programming, and what was kind of your experience taking those early steps?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, when I was younger, I had a kind of dreams of being a video game programmer, designer when I was young. And I did get into comics, like I would say between like 85 and 95 for like that 10-year span. Before the comics kind of fell off the wagon in the mid-90s and we had the crash and everything, I kind of jumped off at that point. But I got into comics too, and thinking that, you know, since, you know, I wanted to kind of get into writing too a little bit, since I couldn't draw or anything. And so I for like a few years, I had a bug that I could try to become a writer too, but that never really materialized. But yeah, other than that, I would say I knew I always wanted to work on computers. And then as I got into college, it kind of, you know, the video game jobs were really scarce back then. If you were not a startup, you know, you would have to move out to Silicon Valley and sleep on somebody's floor or whatever. And that just wasn't going to fly with, you know, with my fiance and the time and stuff. So it was like, yeah, I knew I had to get into the more serious business world of computers before long. But yeah, even when I was in college, I know I really loved playing like Castle Wolfenstein and Doom, and I shifted more then to games on my computer when I got into the 90s. Although I should say we still rented Sega Genesis and played like the early Madden games and the Joe Montana football and you know, and all the stuff you could play on Genesis was a big one for me too. Mortal Kombat as well.
See, you mentioned the writing and even the drawing. I'm not that I'm like any kind of a great artist, because I definitely did not keep up with it, but I definitely had that potential early. And if I had really like worked on it, I could have developed that. And the writing thing comes very naturally to me. Whereas like the programming stuff, because I definitely had an interest and I tried, and it just felt like I was beating my face against the wall. I feel like programming is one of those things. And it's funny because I was listening to Fantasy Footballer, shout out to them, but it was on their Spitballers podcast. No, wait, no, I'm lying. It was on the Footballers. It's because they were doing the Ask Me Anything stuff. But basically, Mike Wright on the show had talked about how programming is very much one of those things of like, it either goes right into your brain and you love it, or you're like me and it's like, oh my God, what is this? Like ancient Chinese?
Yeah.
So, was it that very natural fit and feel? Is that how you felt right away with it?
Yeah, I think it was pretty natural. I was pretty good at math and started young, which helped a lot, I think. And I remember like when I was in my younger years too, I was obsessed with game shows a little bit, like the Price is Right and Press Your Luck. And I made a Press Your Luck video game on my Apple II, like where and got all the squares to flash around and do all that stuff and the whammies and counting all that stuff. And I got it all figured out. So, I mean, when I look back, that's probably the moment where I realized I'm actually pretty decent at this. I mean, I'm not God tier or anything like that, but I realized I do have a knack for it. Yeah, pretty early on.
That's cool. It's because it's definitely like a specialized skill. And then you mentioned like the writing too, and how that kind of was a little bit more of a passion project. Is that a hobby that you still continue to this day at all? So even just loosely like, writing short stories for fun or, articles like whether it's for gaming or for fantasy football or that kind of stuff. And just to follow up right away, which do you prefer? Do you prefer just writing fiction and just completely, spinning a yarn? Or do you kind of prefer the more analytical approach of nonfiction writing?
Yeah. I've done writing here and there. The main stuff I've done as I've gotten older is on blackandgold.com. That's a Saints fan website. They have like a blog feature on their forums. And sometimes I go on like long-winded little essays. Like I did one about like the college football playoff a year or two ago, things like that, that just kind of, where I feel like I've got an axe to grind or something to say, I'll do a blog on it. Another thing I've done is in recent years is I play out of the park baseball. I actually retired a few months back, but that's a fun simulation baseball game. And the league I'm playing in actually requires you to write stories, like write X number of stories for your team each season. So, and there's some really gifted writers in that league, and it's a league where they have a lot of fun with it. So I fell into that and kind of had fun with that as well. So apart from that, and that fictional baseball league, though, I do prefer to, it's a me thing, is if it's a book, I prefer to like stick to nonfiction, writing and reading it mostly. The exception with that was like when I was younger, I did like reading Dragonlance and some of those novels, but I don't know. It seemed like as I got older, I liked the immediacy of the comic books, and when I got into fiction, it was usually the comic books or video games.
That makes sense. So before we get actually into like the football stuff and surf football, you know, I know you're a big music lover. You kind of mentioned a little bit at the top of the show, you know, being a metal fan. And so I kind of have a little bit of a random question for you. Is there a song that you hate for maybe no real reason, but other than it just viscerally displeases you? So just to give an example, and I came up with this question because I was doing the dishes the other day, and this song's just like stuck in the rotation of my music because it fits with everything else. But I actually really hate the song "The Impression That I Get" by the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and just the Boss Tones in general. I'm not a huge fan, but that song in particular is just like, I don't know, maybe it's because it's like almost 5 minutes long, and it definitely doesn't need to be. I really hate that fucking song. Yeah. Is there a song that comes to mind that drives you crazy for whatever reason?
Yeah, you've got me thinking that. I don't know if it's like the most despised song or whatever. That would probably be like New Kids on the Block or something, but that's kind of like low-hanging fruit. So the one I'll say, it's like where I feel like there's a great disparity between how much everybody else seems to like the song and how much I do not, is I don't know if you remember the song Epic by Faith No More.
No.
It's
I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's like 1989. It's a song, you want it all and you can't have it. What is it? This is it.
I'm typing this. I'm gonna look it up after.
Yeah, I bet you've heard it in passing.
Probably, because I am musically inclined that way, because I've been just the way that I listen to stuff. The playlist extends to like the 1920s, so there isn't much that I haven't heard. But I'm not gonna name every single song, obviously, but I'll hear it and be like, oh yeah, I've heard that. You know, before. A lot of times, weirdly, it's also because I watch so many movies that, like, if it played anywhere in a movie ever, like, or even on a TV show that I've seen, it's like my brain will, and it's like fucking Winter Soldier will just activate and be like, oh shit, and make a connection.
But not to mention the movies. You've seen the latest Guardians of the Galaxy movie, right?
Yes, I have actually.
Okay,
the third one, yeah.
Okay, they play one of Faith No More's other songs on there. It's actually my favorite song of theirs, "We Care a Lot." It's that scene. It's kind of midway through the movie when they're flying in the spaceship and they're about to land on the planet with all those people. But that's one of my favorites. It's probably my favorite song of Faith No More's. But then the thing is with Epic is when it came out, it was kind of like a Guns N' Roses thing in the late 80s where things kind of went viral, you know, songs and artists kind of went viral, and that happened for Faith No More. And it's like, what's so, you know, and everybody's like, okay, this band's the best thing since Black Sabbath and stuff. I was like, oh, what's so great about this song? It's plain, it's simple, and it's the whole point of their song is they're not really talking about anything. It's just really abstract. But then I heard all their other songs, and I liked everything else they did. And maybe you have that thing with other artists too. It's like their big hit song is just like a dud for you, but then all their other songs are like, oh man, this is pretty good. So it leaves you in a weird spot because it's like, oh Jesus, I got to hear this song that I don't like all the time on the radio, but then knowing the other songs are awesome.
Yeah, I do definitely feel a little bit that way about Boss Tones, because it's not like I hate every single one of their songs, but it's just that one that plays all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Before we pivot into the football stuff, finally, I swear we'll get to it, guys. Last bullshit question. If you had to choose a video game world to turn into our current reality, which would you choose and why?
Well, this is another video game I play quite a bit of through the years. I'm going to go with, I guess I don't know which exact one of the series you'd want to go with, but I'm going to go with Civilization, maybe Civilization 2. So I'm thinking the fact that what if you could live your life and actually see the Stone Ages, but then by the end of your life, you're seeing rockets and spaceships and stuff. Wouldn't that be pretty cool?
Yeah, I mean, Civilization, I'm not gonna lie, that game's my baby mama ex really loved that game. But it just wasn't for me. I guess I'm a little more recidivist. I like if I'm gonna play a game like that, like give me Age of Empires. Like I want to be able to do some stupid stuff, like have like little blue hot rods running around all over the place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had friends too that's like, how can you stand playing Civilization with the turn-based stuff? And then when Warcraft first came out, they're like, oh, this is so much better. It's like all real time, and you can the action never stops, that type of thing. So it's definitely
that was some stuff of like I remember I wasn't that hooked into it, but my buddy was just like to the point of that's how I actually became friends with his brother, was because I would go to his house every day, and because he'd invite me over, and I'd be like, all right, cool, and I'd go there, and he'd be like, you want to play Warcraft? I'm like, it's not a 2-player game. You want me to just watch you play Warcraft, bro?
Yeah.
Like, and then I'd like look outside and see his brother playing basketball. I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go outside and play with your brother. And then he'd get like jealous and come outside after a while. So it's really funny. Like those are my memories of Warcraft. I did play a little bit, but it was before it got like really intense. It was before WoW, because WoW really exploded. Like I played when we were playing Warcraft, it was just called Warcraft.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah, that was those OG days of like Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft were like the ones that I know a lot of my friends played. But again, I kind of was more basic with my gaming. I always loved sports games, but specifically like football games and wrestling games I grew up on. I was pretty good at hockey games too, so I played those sometimes. But the kind of adventure games I ended up playing was like more like I loved Zelda, like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Like that was my jam. But yeah, let's finally get into the football stuff since we've delayed it long enough. Let's just start with what inspired the creation of surf football.
Yeah, we've kind of tapped on it a little bit. That as I was younger, I kind of had an itch to become a game designer, game developer, and that never really materialized. And yeah, I just last year I kind of had some spare time. I'm becoming an empty nester. My kids are moving out of the house, done with college. And my wife works long shifts. She's a nurse, so I have a lot of time on my hands. And I was just kind of thinking it'd be nice to maybe earn a little extra money on the side eventually too, and just have something to kind of shoot for. So I got the itch to actually do some of that gaming again. And I was thinking, well, I don't know all these. And all these new game engines and all that stuff, and I've never been much for the graphic programming or anything like that. So it's like, well, what can I do? And then I thought about fantasy football, and I figured that might be a good outlet. And I kind of because of and I shared the story on a few of the other podcasts too, that for a short period of time I had worked on the DFS startup in the late 2000s, and that kind of fell through really quickly. But because of that, I kind of had an itch to, I've seen kind of what it takes to get the stats and the players and get things imported and what it's like to build it. So I was like, maybe I should just continue what I could do on that, but with my own autonomy where I get to call the shots, And because I'm not really a gambler, I've always just been a fantasy football player. I kind of wanted to kind of do my own thing with fantasy football and just kind of see where it landed. And then along the way, I came up with the different game modes, and just had a lot of fun with it. Really tried to build something that I think I'd like, but also might translate to other people too.
So let's elaborate a little bit on the actual game, surf football. So just quickly explain for those out there that aren't familiar. And basically, it's a website where you can go and sign up and play fantasy football leagues. But they have all these kooky little modes and variations. We don't have to go through every single one of them because I know there's a lot of them. Let's start with, give me the mechanics of what you think are going to be like the top 3 most popular ones.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, but I think the popular ones might be like a Decision Time, which is the one where you can play NFL Pick'em and your percentages. The percentages of the teams you pick correct are added to your normal fantasy team score. So it's combining NFL Pick'em and fantasy football in one league. So you don't have to play in 2 different leagues to play 2 different ways. So
the Pick'em basically converts into fantasy points, and then based on how many you got right, like obviously you would get more or less points, and that tallies up to your final score. So then it's the combination of how well did my team do versus how well did my picks do.
Exactly. Yep. So if I get like 70% of my picks right, it's 70 points added to my fantasy football team's score. So then you're going to have higher scores when you go head to head against your opponent. But effectively you're playing both at the same time.
By a lot, right? Like you could score 200 fantasy points, but then if your picks are only 30, and then Buddy comes out, scores 180 and gets 70% of his picks right. So that's a big swing.
Yeah, you can get. I saw during my testing, you can get over like 200 if you're playing in a PPR league too, which is one thing to mention. Most of these games have a PPR and a non-PPR version.
And it's also just to mention too, you're still very early in the development of the game. Like there is so much more that will come as it expands, assuming like it continues over the years, right? Like this is the beginning. This is first steps here. Yeah.
I'm only 1 year into it right now, and I don't really have mobile support yet. That's going to be coming along later. And there's I don't have IDP or Dynasty, and I don't know if I will or will not have those things in the future, but there's a lot of things I could explore in addition to having lots of different game modes. So I think I'm already seeing that other people have ideas about, some neat game ideas, and I have some of my own. So, I mean, it's kind of like the sky's the limit for what we can build, which was kind of the point of doing this. Because I think I don't want to throw too much shade, but, it seems like Yahoo and ESPN and some of those other bigger players, they're in their comfort zone. They're kind of conservative with what they add to their fantasy football products. And I want to be on the other side where I'm very aggressive about trying new things and being out there.
I'll absolutely. Okay, that's okay. I'll do it for you. That's why this is the worst interview show. These are absolutely, and I think what you're doing is smart because there is a big gap to fill in the niche that is fantasy football when it comes to the apps that we actually play on. That's why I think Sleeper has been so successful, because they did the one thing that nobody else was doing, was simply modernize and try and listen to the fans as much as you can, but within the realm of reason, right? Like, and they don't get everything perfect. I know I see people playing all the time of they don't have the rookie IDP pictures up yet or whatever. It's fine. Okay. You're never going to get, perfection is the enemy of good. Like you're never going to get every single person on board. But I totally agree with you. Like I won't even play. Like if people ask me, hey, do you want to join my fantasy league? And if they say ESPN, I chuckle at them because I won't even play on ESPN no more. Yahoo is the exception because they have the monopoly on fantasy basketball and fantasy hockey because they're the only ones that do it right. And then so I will occasionally play on a football league, but I prefer not to on Yahoo. But all the other apps are just disgusting. So I think there is definitely a huge gap to fill, especially with the game modes. Is definitely, I think, big opportunity because people are looking for some variety. Variety is the spice of life.
Yep, correct. And I think people do get some variety from doing the customizable leagues. Like you see more of that on My Fantasy League, MFL, and Flea Flicker, and some of those where, as a commissioner, you can go in and invent some wacky scoring rules and try to, maybe make giant size rosters or do things that are a little unconventional. And I feel like those, I don't want to throw shade on that because I think that's cool for those people to do. In fantasy baseball, I've played in some of those experimental league formats too. But after a while, you think that's kind of a pain in the ass for the commissioner to set up. And are you really trying to solve a problem with customization where you should just have a game that's fun from the outset, So that's kind of where I want to fall.
Well, the other thing to that, though, is when you talk about MFL and Fantrax and sites like that with those crazy customized leagues, those are diehards playing in those leagues, right? Like that, not just anybody who's starting out with fantasy football is looking to join some crazy IDP 30-team dynasty league with tight end premium, super flex, and all this other crap. Like, I do a couple leagues that are like that, but it's like at a certain point, you're just it's like you're just complicating the process because you can find other game modes to play. So that's the aspect that I like about Surf Football the most is that yes, it's a variety of game modes. These are not complicated game modes where you're having to do like a million setups and any casual could come in to Surf Football tomorrow and figure out at least some of the more basic modes. One of the ones that I was looking at was that I thought was simple. I think it was double up, or I forget the name of it, but it's like you can pick a player where you double their points.
Double down. Yep.
Double down. There you go.
Yep.
Some simplistic ones like that even, but it adds a little layer of strategy, and then the opportunities that you have in the future. I know we had talked about off screen as a caveat too, like I'm a video game tester in real life, so I've tried using the site a handful of times and sent you notes. And one of the ideas I brought up was from an old league of coaches cards of like, you could you get a mulligan, a certain amount of mulligans based on the coach's card that you have, and you can you could have it to where it's like if you use that same coach for the same leagues over, even if it was redraft, like if your profile has used the same coach for a certain amount of leagues, like it could build that coach up. But there's all kinds of stuff. But the bottom line of just like mulligans, you can have even just simplify the whole idea to it's a mulligan league. You get 3 a year where before halftime, guy gets injured or sucks, you can pull him out of your lineup, put someone else. Like I love again the versatility that it offers, but at a basic level for more casual fans. So, my question to you is, rather than, going crazy and just like kind of falling into the same trap for the football that some of these other apps could potentially fall into when you talk about like the MFL and the Fantrax of like the over customization. Is there any intention of just maybe, you know what, in the future, let's do Sir Basketball, let's do Sir Hockey, let's keep these to the simplified game modes that we have. Let's have, 12, and then, let's recycle our bottom 6 or whatever. Like, let's, our bottom or least performing 4 to 6, we'll roll those out and we'll bring new ones in. Is that where you're going with it? Or is it really just you're sticking to the football thing right now and we'll see where it goes?
Yeah. That's pretty important with my business strategy. I'm going to stick to football. I want to basically build that out and make that as good as it can be. And that's kind of the core focus. I don't want to go, in business terms, I don't want to go wide and try the other sports because I'm just a one-man army right now for one thing. And I think if you start to delve into other sports, then you kind of lose your focus and you're not improving the product, the core product you set out to do. So yeah, it's like 99% it's going to be football all the way. And if that 1%, if I get some venture capitalist that sends me a huge check to write a basketball game or a baseball game, I would want it to be separate, totally separate from surf football. Like you wouldn't even know it's the same company doing it. Because if you're going to play, I don't know, at least in my mind, if you're going to go play fantasy football, you're not thinking about fantasy basketball and fantasy baseball. You just keep the site simple, keep it smaller, so you're not overwhelming people with like, oh, go play this sport, go play that sport. That's one thing with the site I want to do is I want to keep it focused on what it wants to be. Even with Sleeper, it's like, I think they're starting to irritate some of their fans because they've got the betting aspect on there now. So then you're kind of putting those communities at odds with each other a little bit. Or at least from the user experience, some people are like, well, I don't want to bet. I don't want this ads about betting and stuff, or I just want to play fantasy football. And vice versa. The people that are on there to bet, it's like, well, I don't care about the normal fantasy football. I want to do the betting. So it's like, that's where I think, like Underdog is like one that is doing really well with, I think they're focused on what they're focused on with the gaming aspects merged into DFS and sports betting, and that they're kind of staying in their lane. I don't think, maybe Underdog does have the other sports, but, I think they have do a good job of keeping it separate, and not trying to overwhelm the users with a bunch of stuff they don't want.
They do have a bunch of other sports, but it is very, like, they have all the other sports, but it's categorized and separate in a way that it makes it very easy and intuitive for the user to go through.
Yeah.
That's why I brought up the idea of, like, would you ever kind of go that Underdog route of it's the same game mode and you just kind of like click on the football, the basketball, the hockey, the baseball.
Yeah.
That's a shitload of work. And that's not something I'm saying like, oh, this is a goal of in 1 year. I'm like, if it were to take off in 5 to 10 years, and like you said, like the venture cap, you get that venture capital, everything goes right. Like, you could expand to other sports, but I actually prefer, and I think I like that idea of like just doing completely separate than sites and games and kind of keeping it copacetic. Even going back to kind of something you had said on Greg's show, because he had talked about getting you in a league. And you said, if you, and this is a thing I think people don't realize is, that outward perception of integrity is extremely important. Even as something simple, like when I worked for Ontario Lottery and Gaming, I wasn't allowed to play the lottery, obviously, when I was working for the lottery. So it's like, and I'm pretty sure like Underdog employees can't play Underdog. As far as I know, you know what I'm saying? Like, there would definitely be like bias of ethics. And even though that technically speaking, you're rolling out a free model of the game right now, there's still the perception of like, you're the game master. You can't do games. It's just that, not that I would, but it's the knowledge that I have controls to the database. I can add 100 to my score at any time. So just because I have that power, I have God mode. I shouldn't be playing in my own game. The analogy I used is of a game warden alongside hunters. You don't want to be like the one that can control everything. So and I'm kind of actually feel happier in this role. I've been a gamer for like 50 years now. It's like I'm kind of almost the thought of I've kind of retired from gaming. I just want to pursue this interest and build things, and I kind of get a lot of joy out of seeing other people enjoy what I build. It's just as rewarding as to gaming is to me, And I'm like at this age too. It's like I don't know if anybody ever tells you this, and I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but as you get older, your reflexes start to go to shit. I tried to play pinball a few months ago, and my wrists were like hurting for days, and I couldn't keep up with it like I used to. And it's like, so some games, like I also played the latest Doom, the 2016 one, and it's like I put that one on the Don't Hurt Me, I'm Too Young to Die, and I was still getting just like I couldn't get to the second level up. It's just like sad. So it's kind of like funny how it goes. As you get older, you kind of got to curb your gaming a little bit because you don't have those 20-year-old reflexes anymore. At least most people don't, I don't think. What do you think? It depends. So like I wouldn't say it's my reflexes that have gone. It's the it's the what you said. It's the after effect. It's not so much that I can't do the thing anymore. It's that I'm gonna feel the thing a lot more for a lot longer after I do it.
Yep.
Right. So like a perfect example is we brought up earlier the flag football. When I go to Canton, I'm hoping to participate in that. I got to get on my boy Tyler because he runs Fantasy Football Advice Network. Me being also a one-man band, obviously, I have to join a team. I can't just make one. So if I'm going to play, it's going to have to be either on his team or just not at all.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing of like, I know that I can go out there and do the thing for an hour. But it's gonna hurt for a month after, where it's like before it was like I would just do the thing and barely feel it. Like, because I did play football, but also like I was very athletic growing up. I did a lot of combat sports specifically, where I had like really high pain tolerance. I wrestled for 3.5 years in high school. I played football for 2 years. Did a lot. I did boxing and some jiu-jitsu and just a bunch of like really aggressive sports because I had an aggressive streak in me. Mm-hmm. So it's like nowadays, like I'll catch myself sometimes. It'll be weird. Like I'll drop something and I'll catch it before it hits the ground. Like I do shit like that all the time. But it's like you said, but then I'll give you a really funny one actually. I smoke a lot of weed, and to smoke weed, you got to grind it. I have a grinder. It's a metal grinder. And one day I'm grinding, and all of a sudden I got this sharp pain in my wrist. And I was like, oh, what the fuck is that? And it's exactly like you said. It's like, it's not that I can't grind my grinder anymore. Yeah. It's just that like, oh, I did it wrong, kind of wrong that one day. And I felt that for a week. It's fine now. But like, you know what I'm saying? So like, and it's only going to get worse as I get older. Right. So it's like, put this out. I'm only 34, so again, it's like I feel like I can still do the things that I did in my 20s. It just hurts so much more to do it now.
Your recovery time is going to diminish. So the sport I really love to play is tennis, and I had to give it up like a year and a half ago because my back just wasn't putting up with it. And I think it was from like jumping or like reaching for balls or something. My back was just like giving me crap, and it's just like I'm the type of person where if I play tennis or whatever, I like to go all out. I don't like to half-ass it. So it's like I want to go all out and play hard and try to grind, protect the whole court, go for every ball or not play at all. So
see, it's funny because I am that way with like combat sports, but I don't. Tennis is one of those things of like I just never played it on a serious level. So like if I'm playing tennis with you, like I'm not thinking of it that way. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm like, oh, we're gonna play a game of tennis. Like I'm literally gonna call it a game in my head. And that's kind of the only way I can get the competitive streak out of me is if I trick my brain into thinking this is just a game, because my brain won't do the thing if it thinks it's just a game. And even if it is something like football or something, like I can be like, this is just game, right? But that's why a lot of the times I did more physical sports, because again, that was where it was like, oh, there's no game here. Like when you go out on the mat, it's no game, right? Like when you go out on the field in pads, you get cracked that first time, is no game no more. So but getting back to, before we move on to the draft portion of the show, I wanted to add, because yes, this is rolling out as a free model. Eventually, there's a path to monetization. One of the things that you kind of have built in already to the site is the guild members levels. So can you explain a little bit more about how that works? And then also, I know you had mentioned to me that there's a Patreon. Can you tell me a little bit more about that at the same time?
Yeah, and I'm brand spanking new to Patreon, so hopefully I'm doing it right. I'm kind of learning as I go.
I've never done it before, so I can't even speak to like, and that's just quickly too. Like my show, more of a Muppet show. Like I don't have intentions of doing Patreon or anything like that. I don't even know what it is. I literally have never seen the site before. So like that is already like a different foray than I'm used to. So yeah, definitely tell us a little bit more about how even just like getting that set up goes and what your Patreon is. And then the guild members levels. If you could touch on that too.
Yeah, so I suppose you could think of it as OnlyFans for gamers, right? But so
isn't that what Twitch is?
Yeah, that's kind of a blend of the two, actually.
Oh, I'm lying. Okay, I have Patreon. I have one single Patreon. It's not active right now. It's I'm lying. It's football. That's how I get into Mega Bowl. It's the only way to get into Mega Bowl every year. I forgot.
Yeah.
Every year I subscribe to the Fantasy Footballers Patreon so I can get in that. So yeah, it's a subscription service to get like extra bonus cards. What are you finding on the Surf Football Patreon then?
Yeah, so and it's kind of flexible, and I can adjust things as if we feel like things need to be adjusted. But what I have right now is like a $5 $5 a month contribution, and that gets you like more immediate support, like if you're having issues with your team or you have more specific questions about surf football that I'll, you have more direct access to me to ask those. I'll try to get to those questions first and foremost. And then the second level is the guild member level, which is $25 a month level. What I want to do with this is, and I kind of have some of it explained out there, is as people are coming up with different game ideas, or they think that, well, maybe this certain game idea on surf football is great, or it needs to change in some little way, or whatever. My idea is to have kind of like a group of kind of like almost like a steering committee of sorts on the game, as to like, okay, which game modes are fun, which are not, which ones should we try out, and then kind of have kind of a groupthink approach to what games make the most sense moving forward. And in addition to like the general mechanics on the surf football site too, like what things are working and what things aren't, that type of thing. There's some other features on the site I haven't even touched on, like the crowns are kind of like an achievement thing. And there's a few mini games on the site as well. So there's some things I'm just kind of, I hate to say throwing stuff at the wall, but I kind of am with some of the stuff. So I kind of want to see what works and what doesn't. But I don't want to use my own perception or just the raw stats or whatever to view what's working and what's not. I want people to help me come up with those decisions. And that extra $25 would go towards my hosting cost, plus trying to just get in early and be a part of what surf football can and should be.
So the guild members, in a sense, are almost like elevated moderators, and that's all through the Patreon then.
Yep, correct. Yeah, and I think if I can get it hooked up correctly, like we'll have our own channel on Discord where we can talk privately. But the idea would be to have like a meeting like once every 2 weeks to get together and pitch our game ideas to each other and see what we want to do with surf football.
Awesome. So, I mean, we could go on for another hour here, but we're already closing in on an hour. So let's get into today's draft.
I want my picks back, all of them. You pancake-eating motherfucker.
So I'm really excited about today's draft because we're bringing back an old favorite of mine. I remember back in, it was like 2002, 2003, when Slamball first swept the nation with guys like Sean Inches Jackson throwing down 360 McNasties on people. And Slamball recently has made sort of a comeback. I'm a big fan of the sport. For those not familiar, it is a combination of basketball, football, and gymnastics, because they're out here on trampolines throwing down crazy dunks and hitting each other. So we are drafting Slamball teams But this is a Super Smash Bros. Video game mashup. So we are drafting 5 video game main characters to compete in the Ultimate Smash Bros. Slamball tournament. So,
Nice.
the guest, Mike, you have the 101, and then we'll swap back and forth. So, who is your number 1 pick?
And you said these have to be characters from video games, correct?
Yes, they have to be characters from video games. I said main characters, but what I meant to say was like very recognizable. So just I'm
Okay.
pretty sure this is not your 101, but just to give the example, Yoshi would very much count in this draft.
Yep. Okay, so my first pick here is hopefully the refs will allow this pick because it's actually two characters in one slot. If it will be allowed, but I'm going to make the argument it should be allowed because they're twins. They're twin brothers, and it may not be the ones you're thinking of. It is Billy and Jimmy Lee from Double Dragon, who are inseparable. They cannot fight without each other, and they must pick up the baseball bats and knives to defeat the big thugs.
I'll go with you.
If you don't know what Double Dragon is oh man, you're in for a wheel of the game.
I actually think I do know what Double Dragon is. That's an old one though. I haven't.
Yeah,
it's based on the old one for Nintendo Entertainment. That's like based on Bruce Lee.
Yeah, and actually it was like 87 or 88 in the arcades. And the only way to play it, in my opinion, is in the arcade. You've got the sweat running down your back. You've got people behind you waiting to play, and you're trying to move on to the next level. And you basically have to. It's a
different game, but this no. This looks cool though. This looks like okay. I got you. I see.
Yeah.
No, I'll allow it. I will allow the double pick.
So I think those two guys. They it was like one of the very first side-scrolling punch 'em fighting games of its time, and I think those twin brothers could transition to our Slamball theme and do a good job. But yeah, I would say just like that's like probably one of my favorite arcade memories of all time. Is just playing that game. Like I said, sweat running down your back. You got people all around you telling you what to do, itching to put quarters in the machine, and you're like, I'm just about out of quarters. So and you have to play it with 2 people too, and sometimes the other guy screws up.
Oh yeah, that's like that. Like House of Dead 4. That was very much like you to make it hard. Like you had to play 2 people on the guns, or like Time Cop is another one where it's like you have to rely on your partner just as much as yourself.
Yep.
Man, for my number 1, you know what? I'm gonna keep it traditional. This cat's been through a lot over the years. He's made it all the way from Nintendo Entertainment to he's still wreaking havoc today. I'm going to go with my man in green. I'm going to go with Link.
All right.
Adult Link, to be clear. I want adult Link. I want the little kid. So we're going to go with adult Link.
Yep. You use the power of the Triforce there to help you in your Slamball mission. Yep.
Exactly. So who is your number 2 here?
My number 2, this is an interesting one. It's a very popular character in our culture right now, or has always been for like the last 40 years. It's Luke Skywalker, specifically the Luke Skywalker as a pilot in his orange jumpsuit. Because back in 1983, there was a game in the arcades, mainly the cockpit version of the game, which was super exciting, where you play Star Wars sitting down at the controls of the X-Wing fighter, going through and fighting the TIE fighters, and then descending into the Death Star and having to hit all the targets.
That's a great hack, because, I mean, the arcade one, that sounds badass. But even when you said that, I was like, oh, shit, the Super Nintendo Star Wars. Like, that's definitely, there's multiple Star Wars games out there for sure. So it's definitely a nice little hack. I like that. Plus, you get the Force on your side.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it traditional. I'm sticking with Nintendo here. I want some power But with my power, I want speed. I want a guy, not really a guy. I want someone who can hang around the rim, who can get up top in those treetops. I'm going with my guy Donkey Kong.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. He's definitely built for the Slamball team. So I'm keeping it very tradish with my team right now. I'm going Adult Lake and Donkey Kong. I do have some sneaky picks for later, but I feel like I got to get the main ones off the board early so that you don't have them as sleepers.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. Yeah, I've got some deeper picks too. And I had a hard time narrowing it down to 5, by the way, when I was trying to think of this stuff. So, but yeah, my next pick is you'll probably be familiar with this one though. It's a character from Mortal Kombat 2. The guy I settled on is my favorite character in the Mortal Kombat series, and his name is Reptile.
Ooh, man, I like that pick.
Yeah. So yeah, just the acid spit and the jumping around.
He can spit and jump around, but isn't he the one that turns invisible also? Am I crazy?
Yeah, in Mortal Kombat 2, at least, he turned invisible. Before that was Smoke's thing. But yeah, I think he was the first one to turn invisible.
He could always do it. Reptile, I think, could always do it, but it was they didn't do it like with Smoke. With Reptile, it was because like the chameleons, they gave him like chameleon powers or some shit like that.
Yeah,
if I remember. But that's a solid pick. I like that. All right, I gotta deviate a little bit. I'm gonna get away from the Nintendo picks, but I want a character that is still very OP, and a lot of my prep for this was just thinking about characters that jump. So I'm gonna go with Dante from Devil May Cry.
Okay.
I think that's a solid pick. I got the guns. I'm going to shoot the ball into the hoop. I got that sick flipping jump ability. So, and you add in the trampolines. Yeah, I like Dante as a pick here. Nice. Third round pick. So we get into the fourth. Who is your fourth pick overall?
Yeah. So for this guy, I'm also thinking some top end jumping ability. This is a character who had to jump all the time in order to be in the video game. Went up against guys that were twice his size, 3 times his size, sometimes 4 times as big as he was, and had to knock him out and land fists. And this is Little Mac from Mike Tyson Punch-Out. The little ass guy that would fight Mike Tyson and the big guy. So every time I need that jumping power. Not only can he jump, he can land a punch once he gets up there.
Man.
That was a fun game, man, to watch other people play, too. And just to razz people if they couldn't make it, you know. That was fun.
No, Punch-Out is definitely a classic. Oh, man. I'm, like, torn right now. You're killing me. I feel like we're drafting almost from 2 generations, and so I just have, like, I have many picks available to me. I feel your pain of just I could go so many directions.
Yeah, I might have to list my honorable mentions at the end.
Oh yeah. Okay. No, you know what? I'm gonna go with number 4 for me. I gotta go with he's small, he's puffy, he's pink, but he's powerful. He'll eat you whole. I'm going with my guy Kirby.
Oh yeah.
I'm taking Kirby.
Yeah. My wife would like that. She's into the Pokemon and those characters, and she loves Kirby. So she'll probably be rooting for your team.
Definitely very Nintendo heavy on my team with Adult Link, Donkey Kong, and then the only deviation is Dante, and then I have Kirby. But I love your team. Your team is old school and solid. You get Bill Jimmy Lee from Double Dragon. You have Luke Skywalker. You have the freaking Force. Reptile and Little Mac knocking out those big opponents. So to wrap up this draft, number 5, Mike, who do you got?
It's going to be old school again, and this is probably one of my favorite characters of video games in all time, and it's It's not the usual suspects. It's not Pac-Man. It's not Frogger. It's not Qbert. But it's the legendary Dig Dug. If you've got the power to dig through all those rocks and, you know, fight Puka and all the nasties coming at you underground, just imagine, you know, I think he's got the fighting spirit at least to survive in the Slamball.
I just thought of a really dumb but also obvious pick.
Go ahead.
But I'm going to pivot because I'm actually going to get... Oh, my God. I'm tilting on this last pick. No. Okay, we're going back. We're going to pull it back. Holy shit. Okay. I could go so many ways with this last one, but no. We're going to stick with... I want cartoon powers. I want someone with basketball experience. I want someone who can lead a team. I was thinking about, I mean, we literally could just pick from NBA games. That's kind of where my brain went. But no. Who else was in that Space Jam classic that I could pick? I'm going to go with Bugs Bunny.
Sure. Yeah.
Bugs Bunny as my final pick. I literally have a Bugs Bunny game over my shoulder here, Rabbit's Run, for Super Nintendo, but there were other ones too. But yeah, Bugs Bunny gonna be my final character here.
Nice.
So, Space Jam rules. So the honorable mentions, I think, in this particular draft, almost as entertaining as you know, the actual draft itself. So just a recap before we get to the honorables. Your team, Mike, is Billy Jimmy Lee from Double Dragon, Luke Skywalker, Reptile, Little Mac, and Dig Dug. And then on my side, we've got Adult Link, Donkey Kong, Dante, Kirby, and Bugs Bunny.
Yep.
So why don't you run me through some of your honorable mentions?
Yeah, so just like you said a minute ago, I was really thinking about putting a basketball player in my midst, and I actually had him in there, but I decided not to because I thought it'd be a little weird to have the real life basketball player in a basketball Slamball thing. But I also had Sean Kemp from NBA Jam. He was like one of the best dunkers of his generation. He could get up there in the clouds.
Why would we not draft Michael Jordan?
Well, I don't know. I'm a Lakers fan, and I had a lot of Jordan fatigue. I'm still dealing with it. I've never actually seen Space Jam the whole way through. It's like it was like you had to be there. It was like Michael Jordan everywhere. It was painful sometimes, unless you were a Bulls fan.
That's the thing, right? So I was a kid. I didn't have any allegiance to any team. The only team that I had allegiance to was the Raptors, and trust me, we never had illusions in those early 90s that the Raptors were going to win anything. So it was one of those things of like, oh, we love Michael Jordan because like we know the Raptors aren't going anywhere, so let's just root for Michael. Yep. And I loved Space Jam as a movie. So, but that's my thing was like, it's just a dude. I want the cartoon character with the power.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
So I had Michael Jordan as one of my honorables, but who are some of the others?
It was another one that was tough to leave off my list is Raphael, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, from so many classic Ninja Turtle games. Yep, really, and any of the four really would be good.
I love 4 up for Super Nintendo. That's the one I grew up on. Turtles in Time. I have a copy of it. That's one of my favorites. For me, Samus was definitely one. More traditional picks like Mario and Luigi, like whatever. No, there was one. When I was thinking of Bugs Bunny, I have an Animaniacs game, and I was like, could I draft all 3 Animaniacs at the same time, the way you did with your first? But I was like, that's really cheating. So I was like, no, let's just go with Bugs. Those are some of my honorables. Yeah.
The only other honorable I have is and I think he'd be a good match for Donkey Kong, who's probably might be the most intimidating player in this imaginary tournament. I think it'd be nice to have Blanca from Street Fighter 2 to kind of counteract that ferocity.
That would have been.
He is just a crazy spinning bastard, yeah.
Oh my god, he electrifies people? Dude, that would have been a glorious pick.
Yeah, maybe I should have had him in my top 5. I don't know. Too many sentimental favorites, I guess.
Yeah, I don't even know who the fuck Dig Dug is. Blanca would have been. Stellar pick. But
Yeah.
we talked about honorable people. Let's wrap this whole shindig up. We're going a little long. I love it. I could keep you here another hour, but I won't. Let's get your shout outs. Give me some shout outs to other content creators in the space doing great work or that you follow for your own advice and entertainment.
Well, there's yours truly is a big one. The Bayou Bengal, I think once I get to another shout out before I get to him is the Fantasy Football Expo coming in the early weeks of August here. So shout out to Bob Lung and the Fantasy Football Expo. I got to tell you too, as an aside, when I was young, I did go to a comic book convention in Chicago. It was like 88 or 89. It's funny though, because you think of what the comic book conventions are now, all the scantily clad cosplay women and all the pomp and circumstance, totally different freaking thing back then. Oh, yeah. It was a bunch of people dealing comic books, and then you'd have some of the artists and writers come out, and they're all kind of stuck up, except for one guy, author whose name is Mike Barron. He was very nice to me, and he still has his own YouTube channel. So that's another guy. It's a little off the beaten path here, but I'll give him a shout out.
No, that's okay. Can you repeat the name and
yes.
Do you have the channel by chance? Mike Barron, did you say?
Yeah, Mike Barron. Yep. Just like Red Baron, Mike Barron. Yeah. He's the author of Nexus and the Punisher War Journal, The Flash. Just a very good writer and somebody that he likes to try to bring other writers along and give other people advice, which, like I said, in the industry, it's kind of like everybody's kind of standoffish. So.
Sorry,
very cool.
1 R?
Yes, 1 R.
Okay, so the guy with the Packers hat then, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think he's up in Wisconsin somewhere. Hence the Packers. Perfect. Yep.
At Mike Barron 8123 is the handle. Yeah. So guys, make sure you go drop him a follow.
Yep. So there's, I guess I covered the convention thing. So I think my booth there, a few booths away, is going to be the Bayou Bengal. He's a Saints fan like myself, but he is dropping a lot of great fantasy football advice for people on his channel and doing some mock drafts and stuff. So there's another guy. And then, I could probably rattle off some other people. The sports affiliation obviously is a big one for me right now. Greg has been really great to me and the other guys too. So they're way up there. I guess the one person I'd mentioned too is some of the people that are a little off the beaten track. I'm thinking more of as a NFL football fan in general. I watch some different content stuff on YouTube. So there is the Tom Grossi comedy channel, which he was a big inspiration to me to get going because he's just a crazy guy that tries stuff and does a lot of work for charity. Somewhat akin to what Scott Fishbowl he does. He's like the Scott Fishbowl of that side. So, but he has a lot of great content. There's somebody else I was thinking of too. Another one is in the college football space. There's the why can't I remember their name now? SEC Shorts. So they do like weekly comedy skits during the college football season. They usually come out Monday morning, but they're just a hoot. They come up with these different themes, like certain player goes to jail or somebody's like in a schoolroom or something. It's just super highly creative, and it's a team of a few different actors. So I like a lot of that comedy stuff, like you do, but also some other people do on YouTube to just kind of lighten things up. I know that's one thing that helps me with my day job, and as I'm getting stressed out and stuff, just kind of laugh a little watching stuff on YouTube.
Yep, that's why my channel is forever unserious. And Mike, seriously, I appreciate you coming on the show. You've been tremendous. Thank you so much for your time and the extended time that you gave us today, because we definitely ran a little bit longer than planned. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks to you guys out there for sticking around as well. Make sure you go sign up to Sir Football. Can you give me the site URL actually right before we sign off here? It's surffootball.com, right?
Yep, surffootball.com. Yep,
Yeah,
and we can,
okay.
and you can basically set up your draft, pre-draft tools and do mock drafts, and then sign up for leagues. Read about the different game modes and sign up for the leagues that you want, and go from there.
Yeah. So make sure you guys go check out surffootball.com. Make sure you follow Mike on his socials at PlaySurfFootball. At the same time, hey, since you're here, super kick that subscribe button, drop us a like and a comment. And until the next time, I'll catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes